welcome back to the RPG Unlimited podcast. My name is Emma, and I'll be interviewing players, game masters, artists, and content creators for their unique use and processes when they play and or create tabletop role-playing games and content. Today we are talking with Chris Locke, one of the creative minds behind Retroverse, a third-party setting for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So Chris, how are you today? Understandable. Wow, there we go. There's my fail. I can't English. The other fail is I forgot to turn on your audio.
That's okay. I also can't English. I can't English at all.
Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am Chris Locke. I am as you said, the designer behind the Retroverse, the Lasers Liches project. About myself, I'm just a guy. I'm a father of two. I've been vegetarian for 20 years. I do all this stuff on the side because it's fun, and I didn't expect the Retroverse to turn into anything more than like a class or two and maybe like an adventure. So that was fun. I don't know. I'm very bad about talking about like myself. So
yeah, it's something that takes a bit of practice for most people.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Twitter. I've been trying to become a Power Ranger in my spare time, but that's been sort of put to the wayside because I'm in crunch right now with the Retroverse. We got the Kickstarter in just a few days, so it's like I just worked straight through the night the other night and just kept going, and because I had to, there was no way that we were going to hit quite the time frame that I wanted to. And I've had a couple nights like that where it's not something I like doing, but if it all comes together at the end, I think it'll be worth it.
How did you get into Dungeons and Dragons?
So my dad actually tried to play with me years and years ago when I was like somewhere in 12 or 14 range, and we played just one session, and I spent half an hour farting around with a bush and thought that I had totally screwed up his game and that's not how you play it. Turns out, no, that's exactly how you play Dungeons and Dragons, is you spend a half hour arguing about a bush as best as you possibly can, and failing to get into some sort of dungeon, and so he has to make up doors that didn't exist so that you can actually get in there, because you can't pick locks or break through any of the doors because your character is suboptimal. Anyway, we only played one session, and that was fun, but we just never went back to it. And so a few years ago, I'd say about 5 years ago, I just moved, and I was looking to like make some friends and find some people around me, and so I started going to this game night that people had over at the college, and one of the tables actually opened up. One of the players moved away, and so I walked over and I was like, "Hey, do you have a spot? I'd like to learn how to do this." And that was in 2nd edition, so like AD&D and all that. And that game master had been playing for 30 years or something like that. Like, he's insane. He's so smart. I love picking his brain. And the last time we talked about Retroverse stuff, I ended up talking with him till like almost 1 a.m. So real smart guy. Anyway, they invited me in, and so I started playing, and really enjoyed everything about it. They gave me a character that was just an NPC at first, and it just said the Duke's man on the top, and because he was the second hand to the Duke, and I was like, well, that's his name now. I don't care what any of this other stuff says. He is the Duke's man, and that's what he will refer to himself as, and that's the character. And he had a tragic death of fireball, and never got to tell the Duke how he truly felt, and that was a real bummer for me. Maybe one day we'll be able to, raise him from the dead or something. But anyway, after that, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm really enjoying this. So I started thinking about running my own game, And so I picked up all of the second edition books and read through all of them as best I could, and started running my own game, and did that for a little under 2 years. And that's when the Retroverse project sort of started. And so I had to sort of hand off my table and be like, hey, a player who has been here every single session and hasn't missed one except that one time you were sick, would you like to maybe run the game? And by this time, we had moved into 5th edition and had been there for, several months, almost a year. And so that's how I'd gotten into the most recent edition of D&D. And so my core is still with 2nd edition, and I still, sometimes you can see that in the Retroverse design where I use some language stuff that doesn't exist in 5th edition, but did in 2nd. And that's just my brain goofing up. And not quite getting it quite right. So that's the stuff that needs to be edited out and changed. And we've done a lot of that in the second test wave that's coming out. But anyway, that was my start in D&D. It was a pretty, I'd say, basic one. There wasn't any sort of epic quests except the Duke's Man. And when he died, I pulled out my phone and had taps playing, and we all took a moment to just relax and just wait, because it was a huge. I actually had to leave like the table, not because I was mad or anything, but it was like, I need a little bit of time to digest this. I'd become very close to the Duke's Man and had sort of experimented with different ideas and philosophies through him, and he'd really grown on me as a character. Even though he was sort of a goofball, he was still like, it is your first character, right? And when they die, it sucks. It sucked.
I can identify that with that. My first character was profession about roughly 5 years ago, and it was for 5th edition. And it's not that she died, it's that we had a campaign that got beyond massive. We had 21 players last time we played.
Yeah, no, that's insane.
Most of the party has dropped off now, and one of the people that has dropped is my character's soul sister, and without her, my character can't exist.
Oh, okay, so they didn't die, they just sort of stopped existing.
No, they haven't yet, because we haven't played at that point without that other player there now. So, no, we had this crazy thing where 3 of the players ended up with a deck of mini. And they're all, basically, if they had prestige classes, they'd be ready for them now. While the rest of the party is 11th level. So we have some balance problems.
I bet, yeah. That could be extreme. That can be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
If your DM can run that, but that's very taxing on them to try and get all that together. And I would say that like a lot of DMs would struggle very heavily with that sort of power disparity. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, it's why we haven't played it. It's been about 2, almost 3 years now, and we're just trying to figure out. All right, I've pretty much figured out how my character would go on in game, because my character's a druid, and druids are not against cannibalism. And if you go along the lines of a lot of societies where they believe that if you do eat a person, you absorb their essence. If she just ate her sister.
Perfect. The clearest, most obvious choice is to just eat somebody.
Oh yeah, not the clearest, most obvious, but completely on for my character.
that is right on path. That tracks. I haven't been able to run my own game in a while, and it really bothers me, just because I've got players that are very like, hey, when are we going to do this? And then I've got a bunch of people online that are like, hey, I would love to play in a game with you. I'm like, I would love to run one when I'm not working through the night on Retroverse.
I was going to say, a few people came up with some really cool parties based off that one tweet there. That would be great.
Yeah. And I've thrown it out there before that, like, hey, I would like to do this. I would like to run. And it wouldn't be... the way I think it would work would probably be once or twice a month, 2 to 3 hour sessions at most. But it would be podcast format. I don't really want to do the stream format. It's fine, but it's just not something I think I can handle with all of the other things going on. So I do want to make that. I think people would really get a kick out of it. I've got some awesome ideas on how to make it work, but it's just not there yet.
Understandable. So, for those who don't know, what is the Retroverse?
It is Saturday morning, the tabletop role-playing game. So when you woke up and you stayed in your pajamas and you ate sugary cereal, watched cartoons, and played with action figures and played with your friends and stuff all day on Saturday, so like last week, that's what we're trying to make. We're taking we're taking a ton of inspiration from music, movies, books, the culture, though obviously skirting over some things that were not savory, and trying to mix that all together into something that's just enjoyable and nostalgic without just being pandering, because it's very easy to be like, hey, remember Rugrats? And people are like, yeah, I do. And then that's the end of it. Whereas we would much rather be like, hey, do you remember that really one episode of Rugrats? Do you remember in Rugrats Search for Reptar, the video game, where you had to go and get all of the puzzle pieces and then you got to play as Reptar at the end? What if we designed an entire an entire campaign around the idea that you're collecting these different parts of the monster so that you can be this legend and build into it more, instead of just taking a reference, taking these ideas and running with them and creating something truly fresh and unique out of them. So that's what we're trying to do. Also, there's laser corgis and swords and all sorts of stuff. So it's sci fantasy, as you'd call it.
Is that kind of where the idea for the Yggdrasil came from?
That's not where the idea of the Yggdrasil. A lot of those dinosaurs are things that Yui's just sketched, and then he's like, "Hey, what about a giant dinosaur with a city on its back?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's type all of that up." So a lot of design stuff is between Luis and I. Like, he's got a file in our shared Google Drive file that is just Luis's crazy ideas. And so I will just dive in there sometimes and be like, "Oh, so you rip somebody's heart out and then eat it and you get health for it? Yeah, sounds amazing. I'll turn that into a spell, no problem."
That actually goes really well with what I was just saying about Argwin.
Yeah, exactly. It's now a spell called Heart Container. You don't actually rip them out, but you do take health from them, and then instead of other vampiric spells where you take it from them and give it immediately to yourself, it's you take it from them and store it in a heart-shaped capsule, and then essentially that acts like a potion, so you can give it out for the next minute it exists, so you can heal other people. It's in an extrapolated way. So I think that could really get some fun roleplay opportunities. It's not technically cannibalism, not technically. So I don't know how that would work for your character, but maybe they'd be into it.
Be a little bit different. So it's kind of like taking lifelink and making it shareable.
Sort of, yes. In some ways. I mean, it's very specific. So as you get higher levels, and when you use it at a higher level, it can become a much stronger health potion, as it were. But it all is dependent upon your rolls. Like, if you roll 2 die 6 and you roll 2, it's like, well, that's a really terrible potion that you're going to give them. It's not a great thing. But I don't know. We're not really interested in just reskinning, I think, is the big thing, because that's something that anyone with the game could do in 15 seconds. You could take a ring of protection and make it like a slap bracelet of protection. Okay, cool, but there's nothing really interesting about that. So some of our more mundane items are things like the glasses of protection that not only give you that +1 to AC, but if you're wearing it, if you're wearing it up here, you get the +1 to AC. But if you're wearing it down in your face, you also have advantage on blinding and stuff like that. Which is that's not super crazy, but not everything has to be crazy Gonzo all the time in the Retroverse. As much as people really enjoy the crazy Yggdrasil and stuff like that, you have to have some places that are a little bit more subdued and mundane.
I agree with that. And if I remember right, the balance into that was that it gives you blindness if you're in darkness, correct?
Yes, so if you decide you want to wear your sunglasses at night, I mean, you can do that, but you're going to be blind. So you just, I don't know. I don't know what you would, in what situation you would need to wear them at night, but I'm sure somebody wants to. And so that's why that rule is in there, where people are obviously going to want to recreate things like the Blues Brothers and be like, we're wearing sunglasses at night. That's really funny. Also, you're blind, so deal with that. I don't know. Back to the UE, though, like this project wouldn't exist without him. Like, yeah, I'm the lead designer and I put all the words to things, but he and I bounce ideas back and forth all the time and feed off each other's energy in a real crazy way. So I'll like type out some stuff of a monster or something like that, and I'll be like, oh, that's amazing, I'm gonna draw that right now. And then sometimes he'll draw a monster and I'm like, I never would have thought of this. Like the Chainsaurus, for example, like I never would have put that together. It's super cool. It's amazing. And it's one of my favorite dinosaurs. But like, I have to go write a bunch of lore on why it can have a rotating chain on its head. But then that act then inspires his art some more, and then also inspires the world some more. So like, oh yeah, we've got this crazy dinosaur. What does that do to the world around it? And it's a very cyclical process. Like we're always feeding off of one another, and it's really I'm super blessed to have him on my side here and working together with him, because the Retroverse just flat wouldn't exist without him. So.
Understandable. I mean, I've seen a lot of art, and I can see how that would inspire and how that would basically cause a snowball of ideas, which is, not everybody has that kind of muse. I mean, you're basically each other's muses at that point, right?
Yes, in a lot of ways, we do inspire each other, and I frequently tell him that, like, hey, man, you are a badass. Like, you are so cool. Thank you for doing this. This is amazing. I can't believe you made this thing. And he sends me all these sketches and stuff a lot of stuff that hasn't been shared yet out there is so exciting because I really want people to see it, but I don't want to ruin the surprise. So there's like a lot of monsters that haven't been seen. There's some art that he did ages ago that ends up getting put in there. Things that he did 2 or 3 years ago before we even started working on the Retroverse. That's like, hey, this is super in line. Can I just put this in the book? Cool.
So what has your experience as a creator been like?
It's been great in a lot of ways. Less great in other ways. So let's start with the great ways. It has been amazing to be part of this like really supportive community and to not only have people like our stuff, but people to care enough about what we say that then we can turn around and promote other people and help build up be the part of the community that we needed in a lot of ways. So that's been really great, and like on a personal note, it's been really great that anyone cares. That makes a big difference in whether or not I'm able to continue to do this. I did. I did hit the caption button. Yeah, it says stop captioning right now if I want to press that button. Maybe I just need to yell louder. Yeah, guys all listening to the same microphone and everything, as far as I can tell. But again, this is the first time I'm using that program, so I might have messed something up. Yeah. Stuff happens. This is why I don't think I would do a stream for D&D stuff, because man, I just don't have the know-how on a bunch of this. And I don't mind getting on camera and talking stuff here, but sometimes I don't. Being on camera can be a little bit draining for me. So it's not something I like to do very often. Where was I? Oh, so being a part of the community and having people that actually care, because I struggled for years writing about video games and a bunch of other stuff, and was not in a great place in a lot of ways. And I had to do a lot of growth where I could be the person that I am today. So yeah, I was in a dark place, and I didn't really know how to describe that, and didn't know what to do about it, and didn't have the tools to even understand that I was part of my own problem. But after sort of getting away from social media for a while, I did some learning, read a bunch of books, and then was able to come back and be like, okay, you know what? I think I can actually be this person now. And then stumbling across the D&D community on Twitter at the same time was like perfect. And even still, like I've learned quite a bit in this past year, and I really think that is a great testament to the openness of the D&D community and the forward thinking of a lot of its members, because they will not accept bigotry. They will not accept hatred. They will not let these things, let these seeds grow within our community. And I think that is extremely important. And the people that fight for that every day, despite any sort of pushback, is like, that is impressive. And it's heroic in a lot of ways, and very much about like, hey, let's try and be heroes, because there's too many villains right now. Either that, or the villains are a little bit too strong, a little bit stronger than they need a few low-level heroes to take them down. But I think that's been my experience as a creator has been extremely positive. On the community side. On the developmental side, there's definitely been some things that are like struggles. So like I said, like staying up all night designing something. Even with Patreon, I'm still pretty broke, which is just is what it is. It's part of sort of getting started on everything. And then just sort of the harsh learning curve on designing something, because like you make stuff in your own game all the time, and it's no big deal, but you don't really have to worry about balance issues for 500 players. You have to worry about it for this one person, and you can always change it. So I think I would say there's a pretty steep learning curve when it comes to going from making your own stuff to making stuff for other people to consume. And if I had any advice on that, it is to not do what I did. Do not start a gigantic, oh my god, project. Make like a pack of weapons and put that out for free or something, and let people look at that, and then maybe work on like a subclass or something, and kind of step yourself up. And doing so will also help to sort of get your name out there in the community, which is, as much as nobody wants to work for exposure, like if you want to work for yourself, sometimes that's the only way you're going to get yourself out there, which really sucks, and it should not be the way that it is, but it's because there's so many people here, you've got to fight through the noise somehow. So And I'm not at any point suggesting that you work for somebody else for exposure, but if you want to work for yourself for exposure, I feel like that's kind of fair, to get yourself out there, or to work with somebody like with UE, someone you very much trust and are willing to put in a lot of effort to help both of you in the long run. So I hope that answers your question. I sort of went off on a couple tangents.
It answers my question, and you actually went right into what my next one was, which was going to be, what advice would you give to someone just getting into creating third-party content for D&D? Yeah. So, that was awesome.
A few more pieces on that. So start small. Don't start with a huge project. As much fun as the Retroverse has been, without Luis's energy for me to feed off of, and my energy for him to feed off of, this project would have stalled ages ago. Just because it is a huge. I've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours working on this. So much that like I stepped down at my own job from a management position that was making my life considerably easier because the pay was actually livable, to a little bit less than that now. So we're continuing on. And I know people get leery about when you start talking about money, but we all have to eat, so we all got to pay the bills somehow. But so don't do that. There was some advice going around on Twitter the other day, not necessarily in our community, but outside of it, that was like, "Hey, you can always get another daytime job. Just take the risk." And I'm like, I mean, that sounds like really good advice. It sounds like advice that like, oh yeah, maybe I should take a risk. And sometimes you should take a risk. You definitely, but don't make it such a risk that you're going to starve. The whole struggling artist thing is a misnomer. Like, when you can afford food, you're a whole lot more likely to make good content, than when you're like, oh, well, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent next week. And some people are still in that situation, even with a full-time job. And to them, I would say, like, if you want to make something, really do smart. Start very small. Make stuff in your off time. Instead of picking up a game or watching a movie that night, like, spend an hour just making something. And as much as I would really like to get back to watching movies and playing games, it's pretty much all I do now in my spare time is create the stuff. So definitely start small. Don't just take a big jump. That can seem exciting and fun, but make sure that if you take that leap, you can actually do it. Have some savings saved up. Don't just jump off a cliff and try to find out how to fly midair, because a lot of people don't, and a lot of people just land. So the other thing is to make sure that you get yourself out there. Talking about noise and everything like that, like there is a lot of noise in our environment. There's a lot of people making a lot of things, and that's all so cool. It's really cool that we have such an environment where people can be so creative and they can inspire other people and they can all work together and collaborate. Which is another, just like as a side tangent, collaborate with other people as you're getting started. Do some small stuff together to make it bigger. But anyway, get your name out there. Spend some time just getting to know people. The best thing, the best like community building advice I can give is like, don't go and try and build a community. Try and make some friends. And if you can do that, that will go a whole lot farther than like any analytics and any like sitting down and like, oh, okay, I've got to make the perfect tweet, and I've got to get at 7:00 I have to make sure my Facebook is profiling. Like, yeah, you can do all that. Don't get me wrong, and it might work for you, but it doesn't for me at all. I also find it extremely draining to try and be this social media person. I just want to get on Twitter and make dumb jokes if I can, and if you guys like them, then we're cool, you know. And I try to make sure to shout out people when I see cool stuff. My Twitter is broke as heck because of the analytic. Like, it's just, the code is awful, so I don't see a lot of the stuff that people make. I try to go out of my way to find stuff and then to just tell them, hey, this looks cool. I like this. You're doing good. You're doing good work. So just don't go out of your way when you're trying to build a community to build a community. Build people, and then those people remember that, and they will help you in turn. Like that's like the basic thing, like building blocks to just making friends. So just go make some friends. Like it's the best way to do it.
It's interesting because that's really similar to what a lot of people have been saying are as the streaming community, because there's been this huge push for such a long time to network, and people are like, A, network is like practically a dirty word now. B, network when people are going out just for networking, that's a very use heavy thing versus making friends. Go out, make friends. That's so much stronger. So that's that's one thing I've noticed, and that's where I see that a lot of both those communities really align well, especially in that bit. Like, we're not here necessarily to make it. If you're gonna do the analytics thing, yeah, you can, but that shouldn't be the sole focus. Your big focus should be, hey, let's be buddies. Let's be friends.
Yeah.
Let's like raise each other up, and it's really really cool when you put them side by side and see just how much of it is like on par with each other.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've tried a couple different methods. I've tried some Twitter ads, some Facebook ads. Facebook ads are actually not super awful if you write them well. Like, they can do okay for like $10. You can get a couple more people to like your page. Okay, that is what it is. I struggle with Facebook because I hate it. So I struggle to get on there and be like, okay, let's talk. I'd much rather just go make dumb, fart jokes on Twitter. That's me. That's what I want to do. But I've never found any of those methods to be as effective, as just being like, let's just go have some fun together. And then not only is it effective, but it is not draining. It does not take away all of my energy because it doesn't feel like work anymore. It just feels like we're having some fun. We're having some fun together, and everybody's doing good. I would say the one thing that does help, I would say, effectively, like get more followers and things like do some contests, give away some dice. Don't be gross about it. Don't be like, okay, and you've got to go do this and this and this and this. It's like a follow and a retweet, man, and these dice could be yours. And people are always wanting more dice. People always want more dice. That's a contest or a giveaway that like always does really well. It doesn't matter what the dice are. People want them.
It's because you can never have enough dice. I know I don't have enough.
Yeah, I've got a fishbowl full of them, and it's like, I need to maybe move up to like a chest or something. So when it comes to like doing some monetary stuff to build your brand, I guess, or build whatever it is, like I would say that a couple giveaways, pretty good. Facebook ads, not terrible, but beyond that, I wouldn't recommend anything beyond that as far as like actually spending money.
And from what I've seen, that doesn't. Facebook really isn't my thing either. I think you saw mine, which is it's relatively new, but it's still no. Like they push constantly for it, and I'm like, nah. I think I'll just lean on my friends a bit more and be like, hey,
yeah.
You want to help
also
out
found that the D&D groups on Facebook are pretty toxic.
That's what I've heard.
My experience.
I've got 2 that I'm in that thankfully aren't. There's a local 5e group, which mainly they run Adventures League. Which I can admit, I've never played more than one session of a module.
It's okay.
Life happened when I tried getting in on one, and I mean, it was really cool. I have the module myself, so it looks like I'll never get to play it, but I'm gonna reskin it so that people don't recognize it right off the bat, because it's been played a lot. And then I'm gonna run it, in disguise.
I really only ever ran the Minds of Phandelver as a module, and only a bit of that. All of my stuff has been homebrew because one of the things I really dislike, and one of the things I'm trying to improve upon with our stuff, is that you have to read this whole stupid module to even understand what's going on and how the characters interact, and like you can't even start until you've read a good chunk of it, because what if you forget this piece of lore that's very important to the story later on? And so in the Retroverse stuff, we just have like at the very beginning, too long, didn't read. Here's the basic plot outline. Now you can play. But if you want to read all the other stuff, it's there. It's important. But now you can just, you have permission, essentially, not just that we've given you permission, but like you can give yourself permission now to run this game because you know enough about it to run it. That's all you need to know.
I would counterpoint that with Storm King's Thunder, because I have looked at that one, and they do preface it with a lot of lore stuff and the stuff you need to start it. And it starts with, hey, this is the stuff you need to read, and when you're done, you should be in a space to be able to run it. And it has 2 different points to start with, because you can either start it for first level or 5th level.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the rest of them. I know Ravnica has tools to build a campaign from it.
Like there's
definitely that's a little bit more confusing than like, if I'm going to run a module, here's a module.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can definitely say I would not want to run something if I have to read the entire thing first. That's time. That's time.
Yeah.
I got. If I'm gonna have to read through that much, I might as well write it myself.
Exactly. Or just like make it up on the fly, which is what a lot of people do, and it's a totally legitimate way to play a module. And I know they do have some stuff that makes it a little bit easier, but like, I just want paragraph. Give me one paragraph, and that's what we're trying to reduce it down to, so that you can figure the rest of this out if you want to. But yeah, I don't want to say that like. Maybe I'm a little overzealous when I say that you have to read the whole thing, because you definitely don't. Like, you can start running stuff pretty quickly, but I just feel like you say, with time, it takes a lot of time to run a module, and a module should be something you pick up and like, boom, you're able to play that night, you know? And I just think things should be a little bit easier for the game masters. As someone who's run a game for a long time and made my own stuff, I look at some of the published material. I'm like, that's great. I really like. I'm not going to read all that. I'm not going to read half of it. You know, so.
I would say on that, and then if you haven't checked out Storm King's Thunder, take a look at that one, because I think that one kind of fits. Okay. Only reason I haven't launched yet is because, yes, I am reskinning, meaning I want to go through and figure stuff out first. Because I want to do a Feywilds campaign.
Who doesn't?
Imagine that. The person that calls themselves a pixie wants to play in the Feywilds.
I mean, like I said, you bring to the game, you bring yourself to the game, you know, and everything about you comes into it. And it becomes a very personal experience, not just with our stuff, but with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. How long have you been working on the Retroverse up to this point?
It's coming on 1.5 years. So I could go the cheesy answer and say, I've been working on it all my life. I just never knew it up to the end. It is a compilation of my experiences. It is definitely a very personal project and a very soulful project. Like, I put a lot of myself in there, and tried my best to make sure that makes sense to everyone else as well. Because like I was saying, you bring yourself into the game, and there's things that I don't know anything about. There's experiences that I didn't have as a kid that other people did, and I want to make sure that we allow for that. We give the room for that, so that people can have, like, my Retroverse game will be wildly different than anyone else's. I don't want to sort of shove people into any particular corner, but the actual development's been about 1.5 years, but like, there's a lot of things I look at in there that I think, man, I was really thinking about this like 5 or 6 years ago, you know, like, or man, I've been thinking about this one since I was like 4. So there's ideas that it couldn't exist if I didn't have the background that I did, I guess.
think that's fair. I know with the direction with my campaign that I run, and it's wide for that one. I also pulled in Dark Matters. Like, well, I really, really like this, and I really like this. Let's do these two, which are really awesome. And they're gonna make a little baby together.
Yes,
and it's gonna be
together. Yeah, Dark Matter, they have done a wonderful job. I've taken a look at a bunch of their stuff, and it is damn impressive. The stuff that they have been able to come up with. I'm not jealous at all of how good their project looks. I don't kick myself for it not looking near as good as theirs, not one little bit. But their stuff looks amazing, and I'm really impressed with what they have made. They've got an awesome product out there. We have talked a couple times about sort of like crossover stuff and potentially making it to where these two systems interact a little bit more fluently. I think that's just an inevitability. It will probably happen. When it happens, I have no idea. But eventually, we'll probably get to the point. I've even put some lore stuff in there about space travel and hoping that allows us for some hooks so that people can more easily throw in dark matter creatures and characters and stuff into the Retroverse.
Well, shoot. I'm doing that, though. Look at all that. Okay. Okay, brain function works. What other experiences have you had with tabletop role-playing outside of Dungeons & Dragons?
I've dabbled in a couple other systems and really enjoyed some of them. The one I'm sort of dying to try out some more is Monster of the Week. That seems like right up my alley. But there's nobody around to play, and even though I read the stuff, I don't have the time to run it, and I don't want to run it necessarily. I want to play in that system. I've played a little bit of Powered by the Apocalypse. I've played some like Mage the Ascension. I've done some LARPing from time to time, and Pathfinder. That's about it. I've dabbled with little systems here or there, and I read a lot of those other systems so that I can better understand them. But I just don't have a whole lot of time. Like, I would love to play some more, but I've got to. I love that song. I've got like a part-time job that used to be a full-time job. I've got 2 kids, a wife. I've got a family. I've got this project, and then if I can pull away from all that for 4 hours a week to go play Dungeons and Dragons as my gnome wizard, and that's about all I'm gonna get. So I've got less experience than I would like. Of course, I think we always have less experience with other systems than we would like. I'm never going to be satisfied until I have played every game for at least 500 hours, and that's never going to happen.
Yeah, I would agree that that's ambitious and out there. I know as far as systems, because I haven't played a whole bunch of different ones. I'm currently doing a campaign on Scraticus's channel, doing the Motifist system for Conan. I did a Ryutama one a couple weeks ago, and that's a really, really interesting one.
Yeah.
Definitely want to check that out a bit more. I'm thinking, because I've got young children that have been in around tabletop since they were like 6 months old. Both my little girls have 30mm D20s because 6 months old can't swallow that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we used to go over to my first DM's house, and we would play until like 2, 3 a.m. and we could not get those girls to go to bed until the game was over, no matter what, because they wanted to be there. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'm feeling Ryutama with how that system works would be great to start little children off with. Just finding the right stuff. I know there are games that are already tailored straight towards children, but I think if if you have kids that already want to roll the dice, it's a good one to start with because it's simple.
Yeah, there's No Thank You Evil and a couple other things like that. But I mean, my 8-year-old plays D&D with me, and he's pretty much got it. We started a few years ago when he was still struggling with math, and that was a good way for me to help him get addition and subtraction in his head a little bit quicker. And also I just didn't know any of the other systems, so I was like, all right, yeah, you want to play? Okay, it's D&D. We're gonna make up a bunch of the rules. You want to play as a robot? You're a robot. Let's go. Yeah, he played as a robot. He was playing this game called Grow Up, which is all it's this weird robot game about climbing. It's a really fun game. He wanted to play as that character, so I was like, yeah, sure, you can play a robot. What's your weapon? A boulder? Okay, cool. You have a boulder. That's your weapon now. Roll 2D infinity, I guess.
That's adorable.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
So we did that. What systems have you played, and which ones were your most and least favorite?
Least favorite? I hate to say this, but like, I think second edition was probably my least favorite in some ways. Like, everyone says, "Oh, Thaco is it's easy. You shouldn't worry about it." Thaco is a pain in the butt. I don't care how old you are, I don't care what you're doing. Yes, you can figure out the formula, but there's no reason for it to work like that. There ain't no reason for it to be as complicated as it is. And when you get up to the higher levels, it does get overly complicated because there's so many little things that if it were just your roll, their armor class, maybe a bonus, and that's your result. Okay, fine. But by the time you get up to like higher levels, you got like 17 bonuses to add on top of stuff or subtract, and that's a nightmare. It doesn't need to work like that.
That goes one of the big reasons why in high school when I tried to get into D&D that I wasn't entirely disappointed when we never got around to sessions, because that meant algebra. And I don't algebra. I was like, I don't understand why we need this. As an adult, I can see why, because there are people who really enjoy math, and so for them, I can see where that would be enjoyable. But for some people, it's like, I want to enjoy this, but this is hell. And I'm pretty sure that for me, I still haven't experienced it, but just even to this day, that kind of math, fairly certain would turn something fun into not.
When you roll a dice, you should have almost an immediate knowledge of what has happened instead of having to sit down and calculate it. And like I say, some people, like you say, some people are better at math, enjoy math, and that is quick, easy, fast for them. And it's okay for me, but I'm still spending sometimes 15, 20 seconds doing all this math. This is slowing down the game. It is not fun. It is There's definitely some Thaco apologists out there, and I used to be one of them, but nah, man, Thaco is junk. We don't need that. I think every system I've played, I've really enjoyed in some way or another, because even if I didn't understand what I was doing, I am one of the role players that gets into the character deeply. I come up with a voice. I stay in character as much as I can the entire time. I do my best to really think about what are their motivations, what do they want to do, not what does Chris think would be fun, which is sometimes influence. Let's turn into a T-Rex because that would be fun, but also to work that into the character. So I've played a couple systems, it was Mage the Ascension. I had almost no clue what I was doing in that system. I really didn't understand a bunch of the numbers, and I didn't really take the time to learn it. That's on me. I could have tried to learn a little bit better, but my DM was very helpful and very understanding that this was sort of a weird one, and so she was willing to just let me play my character and ask a lot of questions when I rolled. I was playing everybody was magic except for me, and I was just a cop. I was just a detective, and a really no-nonsense kind of woman who grew up like in this harsh environment, and so she became sort of harsh to push back as well. And it was a ton of fun because everyone else is casting spells around me. I'm like, get rid of that nonsense.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It was. I miss playing her too. I don't know when I'll be able to again, but Rachel was great. She didn't die tragically. She did have a kid in an alternate timeline that ended up being a warrior and also adopted a kid too. But I was the one that adopted the kid, and that was a fun thing to role play because we had like everyone else is off doing magic, and I'm like, no, man, let's. I just got all this money from this weird shady corporation. Like, let's go stay in a hotel and eat some donuts for a while with this new kid that I have. That's what I want to do. Let's go jump on the bed. Like, her parents just died in some tragic freak accident. New mom's gonna be awesome.
Aw, that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
What kind of things do you do to prepare yourself both as a player and character before a game?
It depends a lot on the character. So I've been playing a character called Nigel, who is essentially Nigel Thornberry from the Thornberries, and so I watched a bunch of Nigel Thornberry compilations to get ready for that. He's evolved beyond that, but it's I still need it sometimes to get that voice just right because it's a very distinct voice. When I'm trying out a new character, honestly, I just come up with a couple ideas on just basics on what their personality is going to be like, maybe one or two goals that they'd like to achieve, and then I know nothing else beyond that. And I evolve my characters very much at the table. When their stats come into play, sometimes I'll use that to help with background when I'm creating a bunch of their stats, but mostly those are just numbers on the side that only slightly influence how your character behaves. So, like, for example, having a low intelligence but a high charisma to me means like you probably think you're way smarter than you are, and so you're going to act like you're a smart character without actually having the intelligence to back it up, and that can be a fun role-playing experience. Getting ready as a DM is way more time-consuming process for me, and it was usually I would spend 5 to 10 hours a week working on it. Sometimes I would spend almost no hours because I had spent so many hours getting ready. But I would try to always make sure that I had another map. Even if I hadn't used the last 2 or 3, I had another map, another mission set out, and that I had gone back and look at my notes and see, okay, could this go? Where could that go? And that was a very fun process, but very time consuming. So yeah, that's my process is just sitting down with a pad of paper and probably the monster manual and just going, what would be a cool monster? And then trying to build around that in such a way that it fits within the story that they're already doing, and to also leave myself a bunch of threads on the side that they can go and explore.
Okay. I know a lot of people have different processes, so that's one of the questions I like to ask, because it gives me ideas, and it gives other people ideas on, hey, maybe there's something I can try for setting up. I get the whole DM thing. I didn't understand until I started DMing, and then I was like, no wonder people who start DMing start really missing playing, because you lose the simplicity of being able to just show up with your books and your dice and go through whatever process you go through to get in character and get in that headspace and just jump in. Because, as DM, you're not any one character. You're several NPCs and monsters and the dang setting itself. You are the world.
To be all of these things.
Yeah.
when I don't have time to get ready for my character, Nigel, my preparation process is to walk in, go smashing, and then I'm in character. Then we're good. That's literally all it takes. It doesn't require all this extra work. I wish I had like some sort of unique insight to give you on my design process and everything, but it's just time. It's just sitting down and just taking the time to do it, and doing my best to take good notes. God, if you're being the DM, take notes. Take a lot of notes. Even if you have to take a break midway through the game and just sit there for 10 minutes writing down notes, do it. It's important. Or have a character, or have a player that takes. I have a player who has filled out notebooks and notebooks and notebooks on our game. I'm like, I don't even know how you did that. Were you just copying everything everyone said? But he's got like tons of notes on the game of stuff that I don't even remember.
Yeah.
So
I've got games like that. In my Sunday game, one of the other players, I used to be the player that took those notes.
Yeah.
And after a while, when it got to the whole recap thing, I got really tired of being the person recapping because everyone else stopped taking notes because I took notes not just for my character, I did everybody's. So I feel that. As I was saying, my Sunday game, we've got a player that doesn't just take the notes of what every character does. He does the die rolls and the outcomes too. I'm like, that's it. Yeah. And it's his first game ever. It was my idea to be like, all right, great practice to get into. You're going to be a recap guy because you're going to take the notes so you get in the habit of taking notes. And now it's like, okay, maybe there's a few things you don't need to know.
We don't necessarily need all of that. You don't need to know the fish's name in the goldfish bowl that we were farting around with for 10 minutes at one time. But you might.
I was gonna say I've had DMs where that might matter. I've had DMs where remembering that will get you inspiration. So that's something I would say definitely keep with the die rolls. Not so much. It's cool. The explanation on how this insane thing happened can, in some cases, be really, really useful. It's just learning which ones matter and which ones don't, I guess. And that's a perspective thing. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just a bad note taker when it comes to my games. Like, I do it when I DM, but when I'm playing, I don't take any notes unless it seems very important, like, oh, hey, this is the main plot thread here. We need to be paying attention to these couple NPCs. But I'm just really bad about it, so maybe I need to step up my note-taking game.
I can say that as a DM, I've actually done the inverse. I don't take a lot of notes, but I think that's the difference between running a home game and then streaming. Because with streaming, it's like, all right, I'm getting ready to dive into prep. Let's do a quick review.
All the notes are already there. You just watch your video.
Yeah. Or listen. You can just listen. Yeah, so that's something I found. And I don't think a person would necessarily need to stream for that. That's something you could just record.
Yeah.
Which would work great with what you had brought up with the idea of, hey, you want to podcast it at some time.
I have considered that with like our home games, just being like, I'm just going to set down this little it's not going anywhere, but that way I have it and I can go back and listen to it if I want to. But then that within a month, it's like, that's 16 plus hours of audio. Maybe I don't actually need that.
I did that at one point. I would take my phone and set it in the middle of the table, like, all right, in case I miss stuff, because I've missed stuff in notes, and I hate when that happens. That was during my whole I note everything down phase. I started putting down my phone, and then I started running out of space on my phone because of audio files alone. I was like, oh, okay, so this isn't viable. Maybe we go and we get one of those old recorders with a cassette, and we just do that. That never happened.
No, that would be great. I think actually a cassette recorder, just having a log of cassettes, that would be cool.
That would be on brand for Retroverse.
It certainly would. It certainly would.
Within the tabletop community, what has your experience been? What do you think has been good? And what do you think could still improve? And what would you be able to do personally to boost it?
So I touched on it before. I think that it's really good that people are out there fighting every day, and that they're doing their best to encourage others to be better versions of themselves. I think that's very important, and it could be something not necessarily even like I guess mentally related, or it couldn't not necessarily idea related. So like Tall Squall does the D&D fitness thing. I think that's great. You know, like you're getting people out there to get themselves in better physical shape, which is super important, especially for us nerds who spend a lot of time doing anything but that. Anything we can do except for go out and exercise for a little while. So I think that's important. I think it's important that people like Tiny to Pass and Dungeon Commander working really hard to make sure that this is an inclusive space, and calling out things when they are problems, and making sure that it's a place for everybody of every race, creed, nationality, gender, any form of identity. I think that's extremely important. What I think we could improve upon, I think we're doing pretty good. And I only say this as a comparative because I used to write about video games. I used to be very into the video game culture, and that place is not good. That's a not good place you want to be. There's some good people in there, but overall the community is pretty bad. It's pretty toxic and not great. Again, I want to stress it doesn't mean everyone in there is. I definitely have made some good friends in there, and I know there's a lot of good people out there that are fighting the good fight. But like overall, that community is not just toxic, but like can be abusive and scary. And so, in comparison to that, I think we're doing very well as a community. And as far as what we could do better, I'm not really sure that I'm actually qualified to say what we could do better, because I don't have the same experiences as everybody. I don't have the same struggles as everybody else. I recognize that as a cis white male, I don't have the same struggles that everyone else does, and so it's not my place to say what the next thing we need to tackle is, but I am there to help when someone says what it is, because I wouldn't see it because I just don't experience it in the same way, and that sucks, and that's sort of a bigger issue, I think, as we have as a society. And so I think the best thing that I can do is just to try and support the people that are out there fighting, that are doing their best to try and push past injustice and try to make this a more inclusive place. And do my best. I hate to use the term ally, because I feel like a lot of people just like throw that around and they don't actually mean that, but to truly be there and do your best to help. And I'm not perfect at it by any means. Like, I've said some boneheaded stuff that's mostly born out of just ignorance. I did not know that this was an issue, and that's been a lot of personal growth, and I'm very happy to have that opportunity and to have people there that will say, "Hey, Chris, that wasn't great," and I'm like, "Oh, my bad," you know. So as the ending part to that is, like, I think the best thing that I can do is to help support others, because I don't think it's really my place to lead the charge on some things, because those aren't my experiences, those aren't my struggles, but I am happy to stand beside you and help you in these struggles in whatever way that I can, and sometimes that's as simple as a retweet, sometimes that is like monetarily supporting somebody, sometimes that is going out of your way to say, like, you need to be listening to this person, and I try to do the best I can every day. I'm still gonna fail. I'm only one person. I'm only human. So if you see something that needs to be better, or if you see something that you think that needs a shout out, needs to be boosted in any way, like, let me know. I'm here to help. If I don't have a platform that I'm using to help other people, then I don't need to have a platform.
That's some really wise stuff. A lot of people don't recognize what they could do, and sometimes they don't recognize that maybe they're not the best person to maybe be the voice themselves. Maybe their role really is boosting. So being able to recognize that is a huge thing too, and that's one of the things I know even I was bad about until recently, and I started really paying attention. I'm like, I was taking voice of other people that should have been talking on this thing because I'm aware of it, but that doesn't mean I've experienced it. And yeah, sometimes I have experienced it, but even then, there are times when it's complicated. It's so complicated.
Yeah. It's really complicated because nobody wants to be the bad guy, right? Everybody wants to be doing the right thing, and that whole line that nobody is the villain or everybody's the hero of their own story is absolutely true. Everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing for rational reasons. They think they're totally legitimate. Even people that are straight evil don't think that. And so it's very easy for us to fall down a pit of sort of almost like self-satisfaction. It's very easy for us to think that we are in the right and that we're actually helping it. And it takes someone calling us out to say, hey, you're not here. You actually are doing harm, or you could be doing much better. And that can be difficult advice to take because, like I say, you want to see yourself as the good guy. You want to see yourself as the hero. But I implore anybody, especially in this community, regardless of your size, regardless of your platform, is to listen to people that are with different experiences than yourself, because you're not an island. You do not know everything. You do not know everyone's experiences. And just because you haven't seen it, just because you haven't seen some form of discrimination within your own life, does not mean that it does not exist. It just means that you have gotten very lucky to not have had to witness it. So to take the time to do your best to reach out and to support marginalized creators, support people in different groups than your own, and try to make this place a better place. And I did put that out on Twitter, and I want to sort of reiterate it here. If you are a marginalized creator, that's not my job to define what that means. If you think you're marginalized, then fine, I don't care. It's you come to me if you want a boost on anything you're working on, please tell me. I mean, the least I can give you is a retweet and get your thing in front of more eyes. I'm happy to do that at any point in time. That is in perpetuity. It doesn't matter if I have 10 million followers in the next few years. If you are making something and you want more people to see it, and you consider yourself a marginalized creator, I'll help. I hope that's actually helpful. Like, that's one of those things. I struggled with that tweet for a very long time because I didn't want to be like, oh, hey, look at me. Look what I will do for it. But I also want people to know, like, I'm here if you need, but not for me, for you.
The balance between sincerity and what oftentimes can be little less.
When people throw around the term ally, and they don't actually mean that. They think they are, but they're actually, they just want that, like they wear it like a badge of honor, like, oh, yeah, I'm an ally, I'm immune to your criticisms. Like, that's not what that means. That's not how that works.
Well, as we stated, it's a very complex thing on that end.
Yeah, it's a difficult issue, and all we can really do is try our best with it, and realize that we're gonna screw up, and that's okay to learn from it and move on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think now would be about a good time for us to go ahead and take our break. So we're going to go, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Again, if you guys have questions for Chris, feel free to put them in chat, and I'll grab them for when we get to our Q&A section. See you guys shortly. Welcome back, guys, and we're ready to do the thing again. If you haven't been here previously, we are interviewing Chris Locke, who is one of the creators behind Retroverse, which is a third-party setting for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. There will be a VOD up here, as well as it will be going up on Anchor as soon as I'm done editing, as well as on YouTube. This will probably be my fastest turnaround podcast, because it's a bit of a special. They are getting ready to launch their Kickstarter on the 12th. And really, really awesome. If you guys want more information on all of that, it is in chat. Okay, so jumping right back into the questions. Retroverse does have some amazing art, as we discussed a bit earlier, created by US Abadias. How did you two meet, and what has collaborating with him been like?
So collaborating with him has been amazing, and I would not trade it for the world. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I am absolutely blessed to have him on my team, and to be able to work together with him and to collaborate on this project. We started working together because he started posting some of his art on Twitter, and I had just sort of gotten back on Twitter, and some people had retweeted it, and I followed him and started putting up little bits of lore with his art, and I would just do them as either like quote retweets, but most of the time just comments on his stuff, like, hey, this is what inspired me. I talked about like a displacer board, and there was a bunch of other fun stuff that he really enjoyed. He very much liked having this art that he didn't really have a story for. And he said that I was like breathing life into his art in a way that he liked. And I was like, okay, yeah, I enjoy doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it. If we are both getting something out of this, I'm just going to keep doing it. And so he kept posting art, and then he decided he was going to do like a retro, like paladin, and he was going to make it like super arcadey style and stuff like that. And that was one of the first images that ever came out. And I was like, man, that's awesome. And I wrote a little bit for it, nothing too big. And people really dug that picture. The only issue is that because of the way we're developing the game, we're not actually allowed to use the words Dungeons and Dragons per the Open Gaming License and the system reference document. So that image has that on there, and so that is fan art now. That's not official art for the Retroverse. That's just fan art. And so he decided he was going to do the Neon Dragon, which is the one that like really took off for people. And this is back at the time where Twitter still had like the 140 character limit, which I'm so glad we're at 280. Like, we could actually have conversations now instead of just like hot takes all the time. Hot takes everywhere. Anyway, he did that, and so I wrote out like 10 tweets worth of lore, and it was bad. It was not good, about where this dragon is and what this world looks like. And he's like, yeah, that's awesome. And then somebody tweeted at us and like, hey, is this a thing? Can I buy this somewhere? And so I messaged him like 5 minutes later, hey, do you want to work together? And that was it. That was from there. We just were like, yeah, let's go. Because we already kind of felt like we were kind of compatible storytelling wise. Like we both enjoyed each other's work. He likes my writing a lot, which I don't understand, but he does. And I like his art a lot. So we didn't realize we would mesh quite as well as we did, but man, we meshed really hard. And now we're super good friends. We got to meet up at PAX and hang out for the weekend and talk to people and get drunk and eat pizza and just enjoy each other. It was a lot of fun. But he's a genuinely good guy. Like, he doesn't put his face out there as much as I think he should, because like not only is he devilishly handsome, he is also remarkably charming, and I wish he would put himself out. Like, his art is amazing. I know that's what he wants people to see, and because we've talked about this, but I still think he should put himself out a little bit more, because he's a super cool dude. Definitely. Yeah. I was watching a video on the development of Magic the Gathering, and one of his points is like 20 lessons from 20 years. And one of the points was it takes ego to create anything. Like all creators have an ego, whether or not that's a large ego or a small ego, to literally pull something from nothing and to create something like this. It takes ego just to believe in yourself. Like sometimes nobody else will believe in you, and you have to be the one who believes in yourself. And so I think ego is important. I think it's important to not let it override you. And I know sometimes I may come across as little much to some people, which is fine. I get it. I could be a little intense sometimes, but either way, I just would like people to be exposed to Uis a little bit more because I like him so much.
Yeah, understandable. I know when I got to play with him, it was really, really awesome. And I'd love a chance to see Sarazawa again, because that was great. And just the reaction between his character and Puna Cornucopia's character was just it was adorable. It was adorable.
Yeah. He's remarkably clever, and that's what I want people to see more of. Is like the last game we played, he ended up picking up a truck and beating somebody with it. And I was like, that's just a great. We all did these ranged attacks. We were going to attack a giant He-Man doll in his nether regions because it was the end of the game, and that's how we needed to end it. And he didn't have a ranged weapon, so he just threw the truck at him.
Why not? So, why not? The off the wall stuff that can make, and off the wall. I mean, it creates opportunities, especially for someone who's an artist. It creates opportunities to do even more stuff. Like, if I had the skills to illustrate something like that'd be one of the things I did. Like, that was awesome. If it's really late at night, I'm gonna start on this like the next morning, or if it's not, right now, type of thing. Yeah. Like, hey, we gotta share that crazy with the world, because it's fun. It's the kind of stuff you would expect to see in like an over the top 80s action movie.
Exactly. And that is just where he lives. His head is just always there. He's amazing, and he, like, with his art, he's just amazingly talented. And no, not talented. He's amazingly skilled. He's worked. Like, he's got some talent. Don't get me wrong, but he's worked and worked and worked to be where he is. His skill didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and you can see that when you go through some of his older stuff. You see the progression. And how things pick up, and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
I agree.
Do you guys have plans? Because I know he has released some of his stuff with permissions and stuff for other people to color in. Has there been thought on doing a coloring book?
A lot of thought on a coloring book. I think people would really enjoy that. So it's actually the last thing that I've considered adding to this Kickstarter is, like, we could do a coloring book PDF, and it would just be like one of those little add-ons. It's like, you get the two the game masters each, you get the players makes the two PDFs that we're working on, and then if you wanted, you could get a coloring book PDF too. That's just a bunch of line art with maybe some words about, like, the thoughts behind these creations, and maybe some activities, I don't know, crossword puzzles or something. But it's something we could absolutely do if there's enough interest for it. And I may just eventually ended up turning it into one of the stretch goals of, like, we'll just, if we do well enough, here's a coloring book PDF that just comes with it. Have fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know one of the pieces that I colored was loads of fun. And I've had fun on the few things where we kind of did stuff together on that. When he did the Dire Art Challenge with other people on Twitter, that was amazing. I loved what he did with the Red Panda.
Yeah.
That was...
He's so good. I don't know how he does it. Like when we were at PAX, we just sat at the table and he would just make things. I don't understand how you do this. You're making amazing art just right here. Like it's nothing. Like it doesn't even affect you. It was interesting to see though at the end of each day, like after a certain point, he would just set the pen down and be like, "I'm done. I'm out of creative juice." And so that was it was just almost weird to me to see like this creative force like stop for once, actually like stop for a second, and know that he is actually human after all. He is not just an art robot.
That would be an interesting illustration of art robot.
An art robot? I'll talk to him about it. See what we can get going.
So you guys had a test wave that you put out on Drive-Thru RPG. What has the feedback from that been like?
Intense. It's been very good. One of the things about getting feedback, and I guess I would extend this to smaller creators, is to do two things. One, they're not attacking you; they're attacking your game. And I know they're tearing apart your baby. I know they're ripping your baby to shreds. But if they cared enough to spend the time to dive deep into the things that you have made and to offer feedback on it, you should be very appreciative. And I know the first response, and this is even for me, is like defense of a thing, because it's your creation. It is so much you that it is difficult to separate you from your own work. And so the first thing is like, don't take it too harshly when you get feedback, when you get constructive feedback. And two is to make sure that you separate the constructive feedback from the non-constructive feedback. I haven't gotten a ton of non-constructive feedback, but I have gotten some feedback that has been not constructive or just like outright wrong. Things that reference rules that don't exist or rules that are misinterpreted. And then are calling out my rules as incorrect, which, don't get me wrong, there's a lot broken in the first test wave, a lot. But we've worked on it, and the second test wave should be a lot more put together. Of course, there's still going to be quite a few things that are broken in there, I'm sure. In fact, putting the whole file together, I've come across a few myself that are sort of known shippable, is what they call it in video game, the video game world, is like, yeah, I know this is a bug. It's okay. It doesn't break the game. So let's just send it and we'll fix it in post. Because if I sat down and right now and tried to fix every little bug, I would never come out ever. It would never exist. So after a certain point, you have to just push it out. And then thankfully, as long as you're not printing like totally have the time to change things, update, all that sort of stuff. It's a living document, so that's very important to remember. The feedback has been, like I say, mostly constructive. I've read a lot of it, and I've gotten dozens and dozens of pages of feedback, which is great. Like, man, people really care about this. I want to be very happy about that. It's still, I have to be in the right headspace to read so that I don't get too down on myself on how broken everything is. But we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I've taken into account a ton of it to try and make this game better, just all around.
Understandable. Learning how to take critique and being able to separate is definitely a huge thing. I think a lot of people don't know where to even begin. What's your process for doing that?
It's to make sure that when I start, I'm not in a bad place already, that I don't dive into feedback when I've had a bad day. if things have gone wrong at work, if I'm having trouble with my kids, if maybe my wife and I aren't agreeing on something, don't go into your feedback that day. I don't care how important it is. Don't do it that day, because you're gonna feel, you're already feeling bad, and no matter what, I don't think it's possible to completely separate yourself from your work. I think no matter what you do, when you start going into the issues and we start going into the criticism, especially if there's a lot of it like we have with our stuff, it is impossible not to let that take you down a little bit. And that's okay. Sometimes that's important. Like, as much as the ego is important, like the balance of that is very important, to see that like you are not actually the greatest creator that ever lived. That you make mistakes, even simple spelling mistakes and things like that. So I think going into it when you're in a good place is very important. Making sure that you take frequent breaks, because it is a hard process, and it is very, at least for me, it is very challenging. It's very draining, and it can be, depending on how people have written things, very demoralizing. It's good. It's important. It's a very important part of the process to fix things. But just understand that you're going in and it's not going to be easy, and that you're not going to it's not going to be fun like creating all the other stuff. It's going to be harsh, and it may make you feel kind of bad. So make sure that you start in a good place, and make sure that you have frequent breaks. And then when you're done, make sure you have something you can go do to uplift yourself. Even if that's something, whatever works for you. Go eat a donut, go lounge on the couch for a little while, go play a video game, read a book, whatever. Go outside, take a walk, get away from the computer, probably is a good one. Do something for you afterwards to make sure that you don't end up just thinking that you're the worst. Why are you doing this? And then imposter syndrome and a bunch of other stuff can come up. And this is my personal experience, so it may not be the same for everybody, but like those are things that can happen. And so that's my advice on avoiding that, is just making sure that you take care of yourself while you're doing it.
Awesome. So, working on a project for a year and a half, sometimes the creative process has changed. Has your creative process changed, and what have you noticed?
I think I've gotten better at making stuff, because I look back at some of the old stuff, and I think this is just with almost everything. You look back at something, and you're like, oh man, this is straight garbage. I wrote this. And then, it can be easy to be pretty hard on yourself, but don't do that too much. Be critical only when it is constructive. So my process itself hasn't changed a lot. I think I've just gotten better at it. I learn things very much through banging my head against them until I finally understand what's going on. I didn't know how to use like an image rendering program a few years ago, and I had no idea where to even start. I knew how to use MS Paint, that was it. And so I just was banging my head against this wall, and I made a lot of terrible things that look awful before they started to look okay. And I don't think that the Retroverse would be even half as good as it is if I hadn't been failing for like 7 years to be a writer. So I think you have to fail a lot and to be okay with that, and to understand that you are not ever going to be perfect, and that you need to work. You're working towards some goal. Anyway, my process for writing is mostly just, I have a gigantic file. It is huge. And I have scratch notes at the top and scratch notes at the bottom. And the scratch notes at the top are things that have to be finished. And things at the bottom are, hey, what about a Master Ball, man? Metroid is pretty cool. You should think about Metroid for a while. And that's, what about a race of creatures that's just bees? You really like those, don't you? And then when I've run out of ideas on things that I actually want to write, going back down to the scratch note pile and being like, okay, what was I thinking 3 months ago that sounded pretty cool? And then to get back to that. putting all of it together is just something that you just get better at after time. Like, I'm not like a graphic designer. I'm not an illustrator or a layout artist, but the stuff we make doesn't look awful, and that just takes time to get better at it.
Is there an evaluation process you go through when you return to previous ideas?
It's mostly what do I think would fit with what I've already created. So I don't want to. Sometimes I'll actually end up going back down there and finding that I already wrote about something. I'd already taken some inspiration from something, and it's like, okay, well, this idea that I had originally is now sort of, I've already taken 3/4 of it, and the other quarter of it isn't really that important, so I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm not going to use that. But going down into that scratch pile and being like, okay, what fits the universe? What is something different? I don't want to make too much of the same stuff, so let's find something in here that's different. And what do I want to write right now? I don't necessarily have a method for, like, I'm going to write this and this and this and then this. It is, I think I'd like to write a background today. What do I have for that? Let's go look in. I'm not really in the mood for doing stuff that's like mechanically heavy right now. I don't have the brain for it, but I could do some lore stuff. We can do that. It's very dependent upon just where I am at the time and what's already been done and what still needs to be done. Sometimes it is, okay, I said there would be this much in this thing. I've got to make this now. And even if I don't want to, I need to sit down, hammer it out, and make it. Yeah, that's my process. It's very scattered, but it seems to work.
So, from what I took away when I went through the test wave and then the 2018 preview, which I had a hard time really telling the difference myself between the two.
So the 2018 preview was just like 20 pages, and it was actually supposed to be released on April 1st as like a little gaffe. But then I found out that Drive-Thru RPG has a vetting process where you can't just post something that day. Now, once you've posted several things, it'll actually go up the day you post it if you've been approved multiple times, which totally understandable. But I did not plan for that. So then the test wave is like, oh, here's 150 pages of stuff instead of just 20. Anyway.
I had another thought. I don't know. Where did that thought go? It was
I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No. It was piggybacking on that. And we're kind of there. It's just right. Okay. So the big difference between the test wave and the preview and then the Kickstarter once that's funded is amount of content going in. So if I remember, you had, I think it was like three races, and then some race variations. Is there an expansion on that as well as the classes and backgrounds? I think it was like 2 or 3
absolutely.
of each in the first thing.
So there was 2 races. This next one will have 5, and it has the Restless, which people have been able to play with a little bit within our Halloween content, but it has been improved, fixed in some ways because it was straight broke in some other ways. We are also including the Rach and the Trogs, which are I don't want to spoil. They're fun races. The Rach are much like Evolution in Overdrive, and so they can, within their own lifetime, become a completely different version of their species and survive in places that should not be able to support life and become creatures that are, while they all share sort of a similar frame, are very unique in their own way. Very elemental in some ways, and in other ways, like, not elemental at all, because they can adapt to literally anything. So there's one that's just like, he's just covered in spikes because that's how his life is now.
Spikes as a lifestyle.
Yeah. The Trogs are toad frog-like people, and their entire society is based around who can eat who. So if you need to move up in their society, if you wanted to be the mayor, for example, you go eat the mayor, and you become the mayor. And their society, and it's very quick life. Their life is very brutal, and so it makes things very strange, because if they say they go and eat the mayor of some other place, or they eat the king, and suddenly that kingdom declares war on those people, like 2 or 3 generations of Trog later, which is only like 30 years, they don't even remember that they were at war. They're like, why are these people attacking us? Like, what even happened? Because life is very cheap in the Trog society, and I think I've written in there somewhere something along the lines of, there has been no known recorded instance of a Trog dying of old age, because they either die in glorious battle or they get eaten by one of their brothers.
That sounds sounds really similar to the Wanari.
In a way, the Wanari are more about like intellect and that sort of thing, and this is very much more about having a brutal society that is. You'll have to read it. It'll be fun. It'll be cool. We've also got the 4 classes that have been released in the first test wave. Now all have been broken up and have 3 subclasses, making varied play a lot easier. We're also including the Apogee, which used to be called the what was it called? It was called the Code Warlock, but now it's called the Apogee, and it's sort of like the chosen one as a class, and taking a bunch of those ideas around like the super powerful character, the Goku, the Darth Vader, that sort of thing, and mixing that into something that's fun and playable. And the Glitch Hunter, which is very much based around the ideas of like Samus from Metroid and Boba Fett and a bunch of those bounty hunter-esque style of things. And they can load spells into their guns and then shoot a spell, which is a lot of fun. People enjoy that quite a bit. Still need some tweaking, but we'll get there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it does change based on what kind of weapon you're using too. So if you're using something that shoots in like a cone or something that shoots in like a straight line, we've also added things like blasters. So like blasters, blaster rifles, those sorts of things. I'm trying to avoid like just having straight guns in there, because that doesn't seem like fun, but laser guns are kind of, I feel like we can go with that, because that very much fits the aesthetic. But just being like, okay, I have an AK-47 is like, that really, I don't like that at all. I don't think that's fun or cool.
Okay, makes sense.
It just doesn't fit the aesthetic, and if people want to have that kind of thing, they can just simply reskin it to be like, okay, this laser blaster actually shoots bullets, but they could just as easily be like, okay, this laser blaster shoots sharks. It doesn't necessarily matter.
Oh, Sharknado the gun.
Yes, exactly. That'd be quite fun. We've added a bunch of stuff, new backgrounds, new species to play, a ton of new monsters, a ton of new spells, new items, some new mechanics. We've got the cliche mechanic, which is sort of like inspiration, but it's very situational. So one of the things is like healing yourself with fire as a trope. It's basically just all the tropes that you like, but we're going to make them actual things you can do. So like if you're at half health and you have a use of a cliche, you can actually use fire to heal yourself a few hit points. Fun stuff like that.
Okay. One of the mechanics that was introduced in the first test wave was, I can't remember the exact word for it. I think it was
Corruption?
called there was the corruption, and there was the sparkle thing.
Oh, shiny.
Shiny
Yes.
sparkle. What was the inspiration on that?
Pokemon. I really like Pokemon, and I thought that the idea of having monsters that were different, like that they suddenly you come across a goblin and this goblin is orange. What does that mean? And I thought it would be a fun way to give GMs easy tools to mix up their encounters. And, the monster manual is huge, but if we offer these shiny options, suddenly it's even bigger. And so you can create some variety with that. And initially it started, oh yeah, there's just like one. It's like, oh, you might come across one and it's slightly a different color. But then in talking with my old DM, he said, well, what if you did one for basically the whole color spectrum? Oh, that sounds great. That would change things easily, but dramatically in some ways. So I don't imagine people will be using the shiny table for like huge, like big bads, but for small encounters and that sort of thing, probably it's a pretty easy way to mix it up.
Oh no, I gotta do a small spoiler in my campaign. I did shiny on a void dragon.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
Well, and even the presence of a void dragon in the first place is a thing. So
yeah, that all sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with that campaign, there is a bit of the dark matter in that as well. So it was like, okay, so in this instance, void dragons really make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got my entire campaign, all my players are very experienced DMs.
Yeah.
So how do I throw them for a loop with creatures because they're going to recognize just about anything?
Yeah.
So,
shiny table. Yep.
Shiny table and things.
Helpful.
Yeah, shiny table and things that you don't see that often. They've definitely made a little bit more work.
Yeah.
Because I gotta keep those guys on their toes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we had with that shiny table was people requested, like, hey, can my character be shiny? And so we have added a feat in there that if you wanted to take this feat, yes, you can roll the shiny table. There's certain things you can't be. You can't be like wireframe. You can't be like the one that makes one of your stats 20 and one of them 0. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But you could be pink or green or blue or something like that if you'd like, and you will get the benefits of that. So maybe some more testing on that one, but I think people will get it.
Maybe a balance for the min-max one there would be, well, 20 would be a possibility. Maybe the lowest that score could be is like 4, which is probably lower than, just a little bit lower than is absolutely possible otherwise. Just enough to be like, for people who like having those extremes with their characters, because it can be fun, to have a character that commonly when that happens is the intelligence that gets tanked. So to see what an intelligence of 4 would look like would be
a lot of fun. I don't think they can even speak at that point, or maybe they can, but it's like very like grunts and stuff. Very broken speech. I can't remember at what point they're like, you can't talk anymore.
I think that could be a way potentially to, in mechanics alone, address ableism versus disabled in a way that would be really natural to the environment.
It absolutely could be. If we wanted to go that route, I would need to get someone else on board to make sure we're not. That's as we've talked about before. Like, that's not my wheelhouse, and I'm not going to try and make it my wheelhouse. Absolutely there to try and help support, but like, I don't need to be the guy that writes that.
So, you're launching your Kickstarter on the 12th, and you've had a long journey between the concept to content with Drive-Thru RPG. What is the biggest lesson you've taken away during that process?
Oh man, there's been a bunch of stuff I've learned. Go out of your way to try and understand the back ends of some of these places, because you can learn them. But I learned a lot through screwing up. and through making mistakes. So take the time to try and learn the back ends of these places. With Kickstarter, it's especially difficult because they don't show you the back end until you've launched a Kickstarter, which is inane. Like, we need to know how this. It's impossible for someone to know exactly how they can do fulfillment until they've already started asking money. That's not okay. That's not. And maybe there is a place to learn about it, but I couldn't find. So I think that's the biggest thing, and just don't stretch yourself too thin. Is the biggest thing, I think, and that's something that, like, I'm still very guilty of, is stretching myself quite thin. But you need to make time for you, and you need to make time for your family, your loved ones. But don't get too caught up in your own stuff. While it's a lot of fun, it can be extremely draining, and you can find yourself in a bad spot if you're not careful. Thankfully, I have a very good support and a lot of people around to encourage me. But there have been some days where it's like, I really don't want to do any of this. So, and then just take days off. If you need to take a day off, take a day off. It's fine. I know some of my earlier advice I'd given was like, write something every day. And I think that's important, but even if that's just like 3 or 4 words in a notepad, okay, cool, you've done it. If that's all you needed to do that day, do it that day. But some days, actually don't write anything. I think it's maybe better advice. Like, don't do something some days. Just do whatever you want. Yeah, I think that's the biggest lesson. Just take time for yourself. Make sure you learn the back ends of these places, and also just build a community. If you're going to do a Kickstarter, don't assume that you're going to build a community on Kickstarter, because you're not. Because you're not. You're going to be on their front page for 15 seconds, and that's it. You might get lucky and come back later, but almost everybody that's successful on Kickstarter is successful somewhere else already.
Okay, that sounds like pretty solid advice. We're going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A. Megan Tech asked earlier, what's your favorite Retroverse class?
Oh, I get asked this one a lot. And they're all my babies. Hollow Knight was the one that came first, and I'm always going to have a special place in my heart for Hollow Knight. But man, I love the changes we've made to Henshin. I love it. So I'd say it's a toss-up between those two, whether I'm being sentimental or being like mechanical. They're both really cool. I like them both a lot, but I can't really choose between those two.
Next Tech was also from Mugen Tech. Says, also, even though we are still on the Kickstarter phase, any hopes for an expansion later in the future?
Absolutely. We have some ideas on exactly what we want to expand upon. There are some expansions offered as Kickstarter bonuses, like stretch goals, that sort of thing. But I've got some cool stuff. I've got this little thing written on the side that's just called Welcome to Flavor Town, and it's an adventure about fighting tacos and stuff. And I think people would really dig that, but it's not anywhere close to ready. It's just a bunch of scratch notes, and that, I think if we did expansions, that would be one of the first ones we did. I want to partner with a couple people and make some content, some adventures that we can distribute to the community. And I've got some ideas on future content. Like, I definitely want to build a card wielder class eventually, and you literally build a deck while you're playing, and those are your available moves. But that would require time and money, which I do not have. It's just I have some cool stuff. We also want to do a thing for the dragons, eventually release like a periodic table of dragons. And then there's also the Synthful Seductions thing that will eventually become something, which is like, hey, what's the mating rituals of all of these monsters and all of these species and stuff within our universe? And I think there's been some call for that, and I think that would be a lot of fun. But that's not really anywhere close to even started at this point.
Okay. And then I think we had one more, which was from Darth Tolin. What was your favorite board game when you were little?
Pokemon Monopoly. Probably. No, Risk. I also really like Risk, and I played a lot of chess with my dad. I liked a lot of board games, man. I don't know if I can really pick a favorite one. That Pokemon one was wild, though, because you had like secret powers you could use depending on if you rolled doubles and a bunch of other cool stuff. That was fun. There was like a Pokemon board game that was brutal as can be, and I remember playing that way too much. I played a lot of board games as a kid, but a lot of the ones that I didn't play a lot of obscure stuff. I really enjoyed like Millie Borns was a really fun card game, and played a lot of War. I played poker with my dad a lot. I played a lot of games with my dad. I should go play some more chess with my dad. So I don't have a favorite. I'm sorry.
That's alright. That could be hard. Okay. Well, I know you said you needed to get going earlier.
Yes, I do. I do have to sort of jet out. I have work in about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and letting me interview. It's been great.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you had me. Thank you for bringing me on. This is my baby. I love talking about it.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break ourselves. We'll be back shortly. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I did need to take a quick break myself. So if you were here earlier, we were interviewing Smickle Socks, who is one of the minds behind the Retroverse. If you would like to know more about his work, you can find out about it at these links here, as well as you can find them on various social media platforms through this link as well. My experience as a player has been really, really great with the Retroverse, and I highly recommend it. Even if it's just the test wave, they are launching their Kickstarter on the 12th, and it sounds like they've got a whole bunch of really stuff cool planned for that. It sounds really awesome. We are wrapping up now, though. If you aren't already following me, be sure to hit the follow button and turn on notification if you've enjoyed your time here today. I can also be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Those links are in chat, as well as I have an open Discord. I have a merch store as well, which is linked in my panels. There's gear there for both RPG Unlimited as well as for Turn Pixie. I really appreciate everyone coming out today and spending their time with us, asking questions. It's I love it. I love it. Thank you for coming along, guys. We will see you guys tonight. We will be live again at 9 p.m. with Adventures in Orlon Moonfall, which is a campaign idea myself. We do have Retroverse elements in that, so be sure to check that out if you haven't seen that before. Bye!